Welcome to Bene Naras, where we discuss all things Latin and writing and books.
I'm Rachel Cunning, and I live on a mountain that is not currently on fire.
I'm Arianne Belzer-Carroll, and I am sitting in my husband's childhood bedroom after having canned 40 pounds of pears today. And I am deeply excited to introduce surprises. And today, again, indeed, we have a surprise.
Except, again, today, indeed, it is not a surprise because we told you last time.
We should be better about spoilers. But we have Dan Conway here for you, and he is a fabulous human being. This is part 1 of the episode. Part 2 will also be available today. Dan is a Latin and French teacher at State College Area High School in State College, Pennsylvania. He recently completed his Master's of Education in Curriculum and Instruction, which is awesome. Congratulations, Dan, where his research focused on Latin novellas, and he's doing amazing research that's super useful. He's posting his research on the Latin Novella Database, which is a website that presents information about the language and content of novellas, which we don't want to prevent, but we do want to present. And it's their word count, their syntactic complexity, the representation of diverse and multicultural identities, and other fantastic and useful information. Hi, Dan.
Hello, it's nice to be here.
Hello, and it's so nice to have you here. Twice, in fact, since you have a second part for this episode on a different day. So, yeah, this website I was really excited about when you said you were going to do this thing. I was like, yes, because I nerd out about like basically all of that. And as a novella writer and as a novella reader, I find it incredibly useful, although it is moderately alarming to be like, what's Dan gonna say about what I wrote? So there's that, but for the most part, just amazing and useful, and then it's fun too.
Yeah, I'm glad that people are finding it so useful. I've gotten a lot of good feedback and nice comments about the website. So it's nice to hear you say that. Thank you.
Can you
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Can you talk to us a little bit about your project and the website and the tools that you use and why you started it?
Yeah, sure. Well, it originally began as part of my the project for my master's paper, because, well, how I sort of stumbled into it was because like I did it through Penn State because my wife works there, but Penn State didn't have like a world language ed focus of that particular master's program, but they did have one in children's literature. I'm like, I can make this sort of work. And this was like, when I first came up with this idea, this was like 2017, 2018. So like, there weren't nearly as many novellas as there are now. It's just sort of like it's sort of just gathering steam. So I figured like, oh, why don't I just look into these a little bit and do some like linguistic analysis, content analysis, and just see sort of what comes up. And I got some really interesting information there. So why don't I just share the website so I can take you on a little tour. Can I share my screen real quick?
Yeah, please do. It'd be great.
Please do.
Can you enable
I love how we said the exact same thing. It's like we're the same person sometimes.
I think we're pretty much symbiotic beings at this point.
Can you enable? Anyway, here's the website right here. I've been posting every month the new novellas that come out each month. And this month has actually been oldies but goodies month. So I've been able to do some of the older ones like Etericary and Itinerary Petri, Pluto, Fabula Amoris. Now, next up, this is the end of August that we're working on this. This is going to be it's going to be Piso e le Poetalis, like the initial Piso verse, the one that started it all. But in September, I'm going to move on to some of the new releases. I've got some coming in the mail right now. Let's just pick up on let's do Cognates. Why not?
Which was delightful.
So, yeah, I love the Emma Vanderpool animal series with Sacripolian and Cognates, and the one about the elephant, which I haven't read yet. But so it just gives a little introduction to the novella, what sort of story it tells, and why it's notable, both in terms of like the language, in terms of the content, in terms of any diverse or multicultural representation that's there, things like that. For reading level is sort of hard to put a finger on, because there aren't really studies that have been done for Latin readers like this, which determine what makes one text at a certain level and one text at another. So I sort of defer to the authors whenever they say that this is for year 1 or year 2 or year 3, but it is sort of tricky to do. And I also use Dan Stoa's blog wherever he has been able to come up with it. I thought it was important to give the information about the diverse and multicultural identities that are represented, because I feel that representation is super important, and I want people to, like, if they're looking for example, like a book that features disability, a book with a female protagonist, a book with LGBTQ representation, that people can find what they're looking for and have a classroom library with books that are inclusive of all different sorts of identities.
Right.
So for one thing is parallel cultures. This methodology, by the way, comes from a study that was done on literature, books in classroom libraries in preschool classrooms. This particular study used the term parallel cultures, which I think is meant as sort of an adaptation of subcultures, like cultures within cultures, but like it's not it's not inferior one to the other, it's or parallel. It's just one culture that runs parallel to another within that culture.
I love that term.
I like that term a lot too. And in a Roman context, you see things like Cognates Arenas, where also by Emma Vanderpool, which deals with the Nubians like alongside the Romans at the same time. Also things like Drusilla and Sabura by Lance Piantagini, where like she goes and she meets Jewish people living in ancient Rome and learns about their way of life, stuff like that. Gender, sexual identity, SES and class, religion, and disability. So, and there's all sorts of information about what exactly that entails over here in the methodology part.
And I think that information is so important because we need to have diverse and broad representation to show how diverse and broad the world is and was.
Absolutely. And was.
So
we have a huge problem in classes of a gender gap and a race gap and an SES gap. And, you know, as we do the work of trying to close those gaps, representation is huge for that. So thank you for making sure those tools exist to be able to find.
You're welcome. And it was important to me that, like, that's why I put it towards the beginning. You know, I wanted people to see that and be able to see it at a glance. Something's off about this chart. It's not showing up quite right. I'm going to have to work on that. But it's also got some language statistics in terms of the different word counts. And it was important to me, like a roadblock that I hit early on in the research was that I couldn't exactly rely on the word counts that were provided by the authors because they were each using their own method. And I needed a standardized method that would enable me to compare apples to apples. And so if anyone's curious, I outline it in excruciating detail over here. And
I usually roll by word count for what level it needs to be for the most part, because the more words it has, the harder it is.
Yeah, and I find that that's true within the works of a single author. But when you get into comparing like one work by one author that's of a certain word count, and another one by another author at that same word count, sometimes you get some very different things. Like the example that I always give. Yeah, the example that I always give for that is, actually it's right here because I was just working on it, Pluto Fabula Amoris by Miriam Patrick, and Cognates Arenas, which I mentioned earlier by Emma Vanderpool. They're in the same ballpark when it comes to word count, but this one has the shortest average sentence length of anyone, whereas Cognates Arenas has the longest average sentence length of anyone. Like, it's really like, and I wouldn't consider them, like, just from my eye test, to be on the same level. So it's I'm sort of working on a bunch of different things to sort of like really figure out what exactly goes into it beyond just word count, because like it's word count is a big part of it, but there are so many other facets that I'm sort of exploring and looking into at this point. And there are going to be other features. There's going to be some other cool data and statistics in this area that I'm going to roll out soon.
Cool.
But,
How do you?
and then we've got,
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Please.
And then we've got some syntactical stuff, words per sentence, and stuff about compound and complex sentences. But yeah, what was your question?
I was going to ask, how do you do the lexical analysis? What tools do you use? What metrics do you use? What magic do you do in the nighttime?
Under full moon.
Ideally.
If I've got a digital copy of the novella, I just run it through a website which is called Voyant Tools.
I love
I don't know if folks are aware of Voyant Tools, but you can just copy a text in there, and it will give you all of the word forms that are used within that text. And so that from there you can put figure out which words are used, because they're all sorted alphabetically, and then it becomes pretty easy to figure out exactly which words are used, and then from there form a word list that way. If I don't have a digital copy, it's a little bit of a longer process, which involves me just like making a note of the word as I go along. But generally, like most of the simpler novellas, it's a pretty straightforward process, because they're pretty repetitive and most of them are pretty short, and it's not that I've gotten myself down to a pretty good system. So there's a ton of stuff here, but I just do in my little word cloud thing the full word list, which is here. And one thing you have to do, which I discovered the hard way, is turn off the stop words, because if you don't, it'll ignore words like et, for example. Oh. And I realized this when there were a handful of novellas that didn't include et on the word list. I'm like, wait a second.
That seems wrong.
Yeah, that seems. And so I've got this list, and then you can sort like this, and then you can just see, oh, Acipio is used, ad, adhook, aiger, ago, and so on. And just make it up that way. And that's how I do my little word count thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is particularly useful if you've already macronized, because it'll show you as an author if you've been inconsistent in your macronizing.
That's true. That's
right.
true. Yeah.
Because the macronizer is not always 100% the same.
No.
Which is maddening.
No, it's not.
And then
thank you.
And then there's some other stuff in each entry on the website too. There's a graph which is sort of pointless, but took me a long time to figure out how to make it, so I included it on there. It might not be up there for long, but it's a nice graph. Information about the genre and the sources. A complete plot summary, including spoilers, because if I'm gonna spend $6, $7, $8, $10 to buy it for my classroom, I want to know what exactly it entails and even how it ends. So,
right, because most of us are not using these personally for pleasure. Most of them are giving them to kids, and so I want to know if it's useful to teach. Right,
exactly. And I have definitely been sort of not fooled, but like the text, like the little blurb on Amazon or on the back of the book made me think one thing, and then
they're so hard to write.
Sort of a different thing. So I wanted to actually make a straightforward, matter-of-fact plot summary so that teachers and readers of any kind can sort of judge if it's for them. First 100 words, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
And just some further information about the illustrations and even the font. So yeah, there's all kind of interesting stuff here. There's some relatively new features I've got here. Now the novella list is sortable, which is nice. And you can even pick what kind of word count you want if you're into the core words. Total words is all the words that are used. So proper nouns, nouns that are glossed, and nouns that any word, proper nouns, words that are glossed, and words, and all of the words together. So this is everything lumped together. This is every word except for the proper nouns.
Okay.
And this is every word except for the proper nouns and the glossed words. So this is what a lot of the a lot of authors like to prefer this measure, but some people like, oh, I don't really. I want to know like how the glosses enter into it too, or I want to know like the total vocabulary burden, including proper nouns. So you can take whichever ones you want, and you can sort ascending or descending, which is very. This took me a long time, so and I'll work more information into this too.
You've put a wild
That's pretty cool.
work into this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes. And how I break down words is exactly that same way. I'm curious where you put clear cognates for the breakdown.
Great question. I had a lot of trouble operationally defining a cognate. So it was sort of tricky to figure out how I draw the line like this is a cognate, this isn't.
Yeah.
And like furthermore, it assumes that A, the reader knows English, B, the reader like knows a particular word in English,
It's also true.
C, that they will recognize the Latin word in all of its forms. Like for example, like the word flores for flowers, like that might make a connection, but flos maybe not.
Yeah.
Like artem for art maybe, but ars maybe not.
Yeah, I give the example collapsus a lot because collabor is not super useful.
Yeah, okay, yeah. That's a great example too. And like other, so like the issue of cognates was really, really fraught. But I am thinking of ways to like sort of, because like some authors like Andrew Limpy, Lance Cantagini, like they like really rely heavily on cognates in certain works of theirs. And it does, I feel, make it more comprehensible, but I just haven't figured out a way to like exactly quantify that yet. But right. I do want to recognize the efforts that some authors have taken to include cognates in there, but I just haven't figured out a way to do that yet. That's in the works still.
Okay.
Reasonable.
Yeah. And then there's I put this together as well, a master vocabulary list. With all of the words used in any novella, arranged alphabetically and by frequency.
Amazing.
So you can see the words which are, like, these are the words that are in every novella that's in there so far.
Yeah.
So, and odd is used in all but one. Odd is used in all but Rufus Lutelentus, for example.
I want to know who got away with not having anybody able to do anything.
What do you mean?
Somebody got away without possum.
Oh yeah, a few people got away with, but Drusilla and Sabora, Rufus Lutelentus, Sirasola, and Unguentum by Peter Sipes. The three of like the low word count Piso-verse books.
I'm shocked.
And the Unguentum one.
Which is about the Catullus.
Yeah, I'm over here like, what?
How can you imagine writing with like that? Okay.
Yeah, which is pretty, like, it's pretty amazing. For like not asking any yes or no questions with nay, for example, or anything like that.
Yeah. There are some books in which nobody likes anything. That's amazing. Rachel, do you have more questions, or Dan, do you have anything else that you want to add about your work before we move on to part 2 and what you feel like makes a novella, I don't know, meaty and comprehensible and other beautiful things?
That's essentially all I've got for right now. Like there's and I'm working on some other stuff that hopefully I'll be rolling out soon. Okay. Like maybe I can give a little preview. Why not? This is in terms of the different types of subordinate clauses that are used, because like some of like the lower, what I would consider to be lower level novellas are like really consistent about the subordinate clause. Like they use the same constructions over and over and over again. Whereas some of the ones which I would consider to be more advanced, like are sort of, they get a little bit more complex and have like more different types. So this is my master document. So like look at one like Rufus Lutelentus, where like every subordinate clause used is an infinitive phrase. Sirasola is like that too, I believe. But a more like bumping up to like Sacri Pulli, for example.
Yeah.
Got a lot of infinitive phrases, but like some quad, ubi, present participle phrases, and there's 1 or 2 quamquams in there. Like the most complex one I've done so far is the Itinera Petri, which has like a ton of ones which once or twice.
Yeah, I read that before a few years back.
Bob Patrick, he like uses a lot of these participles too, like present participle phrase, perfect participle phrase, some stuff, and then like a little quasi, nisi, dum, quam, si a couple times, quam, ablative absolute, stuff like that. Yeah.
This is really cool.
My geek brain loves this.
It's cool because I do feel that this really plays in, like what I was talking about earlier with like, okay, if there's 2 novellas that have a similar word count from different authors, like what does the
what's that mean?
Where does the what's the differential in level there, and what factors enter into it? And I do think that this is an interesting factor that does play into the reading level a little bit alongside.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm working on. I'm trying to figure it out, and I even this is what's going to be really cool. I was trying to figure out a way to quantify this. Like, how do I like boil this down to like a number? And I found a formula which is used by like biologists to determine biodiversity. So like a number of different species in a certain area, for example. So if like an area has like all the same species, that scores a 0 in this formula. I forget what it's called.
Oh.
If it has like a lot of different ones distributed roughly equally, the max score is 5. So score 0 to 5, like Rufus Lutelentus gets a 0 because it's all infinitive phrases. But something like, what did we do before? We did Sacri Pulli.
Sacri Pulli, yeah.
1.2, just about.
Interesting.
And then Domini Secretum was what? 1.8.
Mm-hmm.
And then the most complex I've seen so far was Itinera Petri, which was 2.2. So like I'm trying to figure out like how to work that into like a broader like formula for determining like its effects on level. So I'm working on it. This is not on the website yet because I need to like go back and look at all the data, because I didn't gather data on the types of subordinate clause. I just gathered data on whether it has a subordinate clause or not. So I've got to like I've got to go back in there.
If you don't have enough people living in your brain, we could come live in your brain. I would love to like hang out in there.
Right. So syntax does play such an important role in comprehension because it does affect it. So I think kind of delving into syntax is another good way to think about comprehensibility. And I'm real excited. And yes, we do have to wrap up, but I'm really glad you asked that last question, Arianne.
One quick thing to add. Like one thing I've always emphasized is that studies show that you don't need to overly simplify syntax as long as the vocabulary is simple enough. Like that
I'm excited to talk about that because I think we have a question about that, and I'm really excited to talk about that with you.
I can't repeat that enough.
Super relevant. Yeah.
It is.
Anyway, it was great to be here today. I'm looking forward to part 2.
Me too. Thank you so much for visiting with us, Dan.
You're welcome. This is a lot of fun.
Yes, twice. Thanks. Well, I guess, I don't know if we say Facete Waliatis because it's kind of like a part 2er, but maybe we should go for that.
No, I think we say have a cookie break and we'll see you soon.
Right. Wally.
Cookie break.
Wally,
Cookie break.